what is one event from the war that you remember the most, and why was it so memorable?
Oh, that's a zinger. Okay. One of the things I can remember is trying to save a buddy from going into the draft. We weren't totally successful, but we tried to break his arm so that he would not be actually drafted.
Wow.
So, but he did slip through the cracks, and he did end up going. So, and that was memorable because he didn't come back the same.
Okay. So, in what ways did the war influence your life?
Well, the whole period influenced our life. I mean, we did things in an unorthodox way. I wasn't trained to be a teacher per se in the normal route, so I take a look at things very differently. And I like the unorthodox way of looking at it. We looked at the world in a very glowing way. We didn't know if there would be a tomorrow, so we certainly enjoyed it for everything it had to offer. So.
And what kind of views did the people around you hold, and was it different from yours?
I lived in two worlds when I was doing it. I lived because I was part of a team, a U.S. team at the time, so I was with the straight and the narrow grouping, came from a traditional high school, went to Penn State, Maine, and people did think differently up there. There were a lot of activists, a lot of people that thought differently than I had certainly grown up with, that were experimenting with everything. And so yes, it was a real exposure to different ideas, different thinking, different ideas.
What do you think was the driving force behind maybe your opinion or other people's opinions? Was it maybe the media, or if they knew someone who was really involved with the war? Or
Oh, I think, yeah, I don't think any of us were not influenced by the war and having a lot of our friends go to that war. A lot of the people we knew that went to that war, as they said, they didn't come back the same. There were people that lost husbands mentally. They came back physically, but they came back mentally. It was a long time for us to realize that the guys that came back from that war, they went to the wilderness. So many of my friends are the people that went on these they started these adventure camps. Well, they didn't go to start these adventure camps because they were businessmen. They found themselves more comfortable in the jungle and in the wilderness. That was the environment that made the most impression to them. So losing them to that took years for us to understand their thinking and why couldn't they just return to suburbia, you know, in our way of doing things, but that world was gone to them. So it definitely influenced. It wasn't a popular war, so that definitely was an influence. It wasn't a pack of patriotism, and people felt they had to rebel against those kinds of things. So yes, it was probably what the media was presenting as the war of this particular era. And again, but I think you couldn't help but be influenced by people that went to war.
And it was very effective.
It was effective in swaying the public to that also, but the downturn on that, again, from the human side, is these guys came back from the war, and they literally came back as much a hero as the people that came back from World War II. They fought their hearts out. They fought for their country, but they weren't received that way. Yes. I think they've always held a grudge about the fact that they were not respected when they came home. And I think they blame the media because that's who actually created that era.
How do you feel now about the war as opposed to how it differed from how you felt about it back then?
Oh, I still feel the same. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. I regret the fact that it took so many mental lives from so many of my friends.
How did you feel about the American government over the course of the war? Did your views on the government change?
I think they failed the guys that were over there. I think they didn't support. And I don't know, it was a war that they didn't understand. Fighting with people in the jungle and having children that were actually soldiers, I mean, that was a mentality we couldn't even relate to at the time, and I'm not sure we can still relate to. It's probably half our problem over in Afghanistan and Iraq at the present moment.
Mentalities haven't changed and shifted, like, oh, this war's going to end soon, it's all going to be over, or
No, I never believed that.
Not until everyone finally came home.
Right, because they had said it too many times. You didn't know whether you were going to be around tomorrow. It was, you really did embrace the moment, because unfortunately there might not have been tomorrow. And these people were not sure of a future. They were not sure of a solidarity of the government or of the government backing them. They really felt as if they were kind of walking on eggs. I can remember one time putting being part of it, we put the president's car in the pond at Penn State.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, that, and yes, it caused a stir. Don't forget the time that we would have been. We would have been in college, near the end of college, or some were starting just in their young careers. So yes, it disrupted. That's when the age group was.
Okay, because I thought if you went to college, you were exempt from...
That's what we thought too.
Oh.
That wasn't always the case.
Alter your views on war or American foreign policy in general?
I think it made us wary of not believing everything the president said and trying to seek out the truth ourselves. And as much as you're investigating all the aspects of it, because what they sometimes tell us is not always the truth.
So was that changed at all by the time period in the war from maybe previous?
We were kind of in a cocoon because of that factor. So I mean, for what we were doing, they tried to keep us what they called normal. So we would train and we would go over and do the normal stuff. So we had one foot in one foot in one egg, and then the next foot would be inside the world. And I remember one thing, we were actually at a meet up in New York, and we were so bored, and it rained, and we were just so bored. We were camping out on this hillside, and somebody said, there's this really neat party going on at Woodstock, so let's go on over to Woodstock for a couple of days. And that's how I ended up at Woodstock.
Oh, you actually went to Woodstock?
Yes, yeah. So that's how, but I didn't go to Woodstock because I was into that whole thing. It was just because we were so bored. So we went over, and when Woodstock got into its real heyday, then we had to leave because we had to meet. But we didn't see the part of it. We didn't see part of it. And the only thing I remember about Woodstock is the rain. So.
Okay. With the end of the war, or did the more domestic culture continue on as it would?
I think it ended pretty much with the war. We had literally outgrown some of that too.
I think maybe the non-Americans or the foreigners understood the war more so than maybe
we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. I think that they are just more politically oriented.